Hello watch enthusiasts. Now today, starting on this rather familiar site of this Seiko Presage, which I showed you in my previous video, I'd like to do a video about my favourite and what I think are the best value wristwatches below £1,000. Now this fits into both the dress and the sports categories, though in this video I will be focusing on features rather than looks, because of course looks are subjective. Now the first watch on this list is of course the Seiko Presage SSA 305J1. And this is an interesting watch because it incorporates a number of features which one rarely sees on watches below £1,000. At £380 or so, it is incredible really that this watch incorporates a power reserve indicator into an automatic movement. Now for that price, in terms of Swiss technology, one really would only get a simple minutes, seconds and hours, plus maybe a date. The power reserve would really be reserved for more expensive wristwatches, making this watch really incredible value. Equally, the finishing of the dial is very attractive, in that it's very, very heavily layered. So when I say that, I mean that the dial is designed in such a way that it has many facets and lower levels. So for example, that sub-dial, which has a date hand, a pointer-style date, is recessed below the dial, giving greater depth to the watch, and altogether making it look more premium. Equally, the hands and the case shape are very similar to certain Grand Seikos, which are of course in a completely different price bracket, but it does show a nod and a general aesthetic which Seiko is going for, which is something to be respected when a lot of brands make very derivative designs, which resemble other wristwatches. Here they really are going with their own design, and I do applaud that. Equally, the case of this watch is water resistant to 100 metres, making this watch actually a very, very versatile piece and making it slightly more than a dress watch, in the same way that a Rolex Oyster can be used in a sports context other than simply being a dress watch. And this really is excellent for this type of watch, on the basis that at this price one could consider this watch a first wristwatch for someone becoming interested in automatic and mechanical wristwatches. So this really does offer a heck of a lot. Equally, this watch comes on a very high quality metal bracelet, stainless steel bracelet, which matches that stainless steel case in that it has polished facets and brushed ones to give the whole watch a very versatile look, both in combination with that very sporty aesthetic that a metal bracelet has, but equally going back to the fact that this watch is at core a dress watch. The next watch, which I think is a very, very good purchase under £1,000, is the Christopher Ward C65 Trident with this vintage style. Now the reason why I've chosen this watch is because I think it offers a fantastic level of quality and level of features for around the £500 mark. Now this is actually the smaller version of their normal C65 classic design. However, this is only 38mm to that's 43. Now this is slightly more expensive, but in my opinion offers far more features in terms of design. Now at 38mm, this watch is fantastic for wearing as a dress watch and as a sports watch. So it's large enough to be noticeable on the wrist when wearing short sleeves, but small enough to fit under a cuff during business or work, which I think makes a very interesting and very cleverly thought out wristwatch. Equally, the fact that it's water resistant to 150 metres makes it perfect for swimming and even low level diving. Which again is something which will appeal to a lot of people who want a watch which is very versatile for this price. The movement inside this watch is an ETA 2824 or a Sellita SW200. So these are the base sort of entry level of Swiss movements, but they're very reliable and very easily serviced, making them perfect really for a watch which is both to be used as a dress watch and as a sports watch. I equally find that heavily domed sapphire crystal very attractive in my opinion, because it draws the eye away from the more sports-inspired case and makes this watch a very clear hybrid between a dress and a sports watch. The hands and indices of this watch are also very heavily loomed, and are clearly a vestige from that dive inspiration, that dive aspect which has been in the Trident series. So for example, the 12 o'clock loom is very clearly differentiable from the rest of the dial, making it very legible in the dark, which is something, again, appreciated, which is neglected on a lot of dress watches. Another attractive feature of this watch is that very heavily embossed back, really denoting this watch as being its own type of watch and not a watch which is trying to be something else. This really does demonstrate that Christopher Ward are really trying to make their own name and their own watch, which is something to be, again, applauded for a small manufacturer like this. If, however, the C65 doesn't offer enough features in terms of sports watch characteristics, then I can't think of a better watch in the mid £600 to £700 price bracket than the Trident Professional, the C60. And this is their 600-metre diver with a ceramic bezel and a high legibility, high lume dial. But equally, this watch maintains that very typical design of Christopher Ward, with those sloping lugs and polished tops. Now, one very appealing thing about this watch is the sheer number of variations you can get. This watch comes in a great number of different dial colours, blues, whites, blacks, even ones with red bezels that remind me of Tudor Black Bays. This, in my opinion, makes this a very attractive purchase because it means it can appeal to whatever aesthetic the particular buyer wants. My personal favourite is the vintage style version, because of course I love vintage watches, and this version still has the ceramic bezel, but where previously one would see crisp white lume, here they've replaced that with this old radium style lume to give it an aged look, which I think is very, very attractive. This watch is also a very serious diver with a water resistance of 600 metres, which is very impressive considering the price. Usually around this price point one rarely gets beyond the 300 metre dive point. That said, though, it doesn't really matter in practice, because really who is going to take a watch down to 600 metres? Now, if a date and time function plus the bezel isn't sufficient for you, then there is also the GMT version of this watch, which includes a GMT hand and a GMT bezel. Now, the GMT bezel does also incorporate dive lume, so you can actually use it as a dive watch, and it retains that 600 metre water resistance, making one of the, well, quite possibly one of the most versatile watches below £1,000, simply due to all these features, making it a very rounded wristwatch. Now, of course, this watch is also available in a 38mm version as well as the 43, and I think this offers real versatility because, for many people, a 38mm dive watch with a heavy bracelet will actually be sufficient. That said, though, I think that the 38mm can look a little bit thick in comparison to its size, and therefore a little bit truncated, but on the wrist it looks splendid. Now, finally, on the subject of Christopher Ward, it is very appealing that their company offers a 5-year warranty, which is substantially more than most brands do, and on par with Rolex, which does put a lot of manufacturers with their 2 or 1 year warranties to shame, so that does offer a lot for the price. Next, from a German company, the famous company Sinn, I think the Sinn 556 offers fantastic features for this price point. So for around the £800 to £900 mark on a strap and the £900 to £1,000 mark on a bracelet, this watch is a pilot's watch at base. So it has those large, legible arrow or sword style hands, depending on the model, and then also very legible dials with clear numerals or simple indices. These also have the date and feature ETA or Sellita SW200 movements. And of course, these again, as they are in the Christopher Wards, are very reliable and durable movements which offer a decent level of accuracy at a relatively low service price. These watches feature brushed stainless steel cases, which, though not tegamented, are still very resilient. The tegamenting is very much something of the more expensive Zinns, notably the 856, which is the step above the 556. That said, though, this will offer a fairly rugged and durable case, and will show the minimum of scratches because it's brushed, which is a helpful feature when a lot of watches are polished, which does show up scratches much more quickly. One remarkable feature of this watch, which does set it apart from watches in the £500 to £600 mark, is that it's 200 metres water resistant, but with a sapphire case back. And for something which isn't a dive watch, this is rather impressive, showing that Sinn are really thinking about the possible uses of this watch as a sports wristwatch. These watches can also be called real professional pilot's watches, because they also feature, as well as that water resistance, anti-magnetism. So these watches are anti-magnetic. I don't believe they're as anti-magnetic as some of the closed case Zinns, which are actually anti-magnetic to about 1000 Gauss. these have a more limited anti-magnetism, but still will be perfectly capable of taking anything that you might encounter on a day-to-day basis, making these watches very, very practical. If, however, you like this watch but would appreciate something more dress-oriented, then Xindu also offer mother-of-pearl dials and sunburst-style brown dials with steel hands rather than those high-legibility painted ones, which again offer a more dress-oriented aesthetic and design, which really does mean this watch appeals to a great number of people. Now, the final watch on this list will be no surprise to those who watch my channel often. It is the Oris Aquis. Now, in my opinion, this is one of the most attractive dive watches there are, at any price point, but that's merely my opinion. But in terms of features, I think Oris offer a really fantastic watch at this price. Now, the standard retail price is over £1,000, it's about £1,200. However, even from Oris themselves, you can acquire these watches for about £950 on the bracelet, or about £900 on the rubber strap, making this a really interesting buy, and a very impressive watch for the price. This watch features a Sellita SW200 movement, which is a clone movement of an ETA 2824, so again it's very easily serviced, and because it's exclusively Sellita, the parts can be easily bought, whereas ETA parts are becoming more and more scarce, which is a problem with watches with ETA movements, hence why Xin and Oris use Sellita. Now, the finishing of this watch is also very impressive. So, for example, the bezel. There are actually 3 different types of bezels you can have on this watch. A polished ceramic, a brushed ceramic, and tungsten, which really allows one to pick exactly the look one wants on a watch. This is also a pleasant change when compared to most polished ceramic bezels. One can have a brushed one, which gives a very, very different look, and an altogether more sports-oriented look to the watch. And equally goes along with that Bauhaus design which the whole watch follows, having this extremely simple dial and extremely simple bezel. The placement of the date window is also a pleasure to see, in my opinion, because placed at 6 o'clock it means it doesn't imbalance the dial, and equally makes the whole watch more legible at night, meaning you can quickly differentiate the top from the bottom, despite it not necessarily being obvious when one sees simple shots of the watch in the light. But that extra length on the marker at 12 o'clock and that shortened one at 6 o'clock really do serve to make the dial very, very legible. BGW9 lume on this watch is also very helpful, because it gives the whole watch a blue glow, rather than having the usual green, which tends to be more legible, and equally, in terms of a dive watch, blue is the last colour that one stops seeing at depth, so actually this really does prove that it does have a reason for being. This watch also comes on a very, very comfortable bracelet or rubber strap. Now, both have dive extensions on their clasps, and also offer very great comfort in the heat, and where the bracelet has gaps to allow your wrist to breathe, the rubber strap is extremely supple to allow more comfortable wear. Now, again, with this watch, versatility is very impressive. So I checked, but just the date version of this watch, that's the basic version, which sits below the £1,000 mark, there are 41 different models on sale, which really is a testament to the amount of variation that Oris has put into this watch. Now, when compared to the Christopher Ward I showed you, this watch does have only half the water resistance, but that said, it does have an exhibition case back, which is something which I think it's a sacrifice that I'd be willing to make, simply because I think it adds to the aesthetic of the watch without really detracting from functionality. One observation or possible complaint I will make about this watch, though, is that if you enjoy wearing NATO straps or swapping out your straps, this watch probably won't be for you, on the basis that there are only 2 straps which really fit this watch, which are the Oris strap and equally their bracelet, because they actually have a 12mm lug width, rather than a normal 20, 18 or 22. So you can't fit NATO straps or other straps unless you cut your own straps, which is what I've done, which is a bit risky though. Anyway, I hope this video was helpful, so I'll end here on this picture of this blue Oris. So thank you very much for watching. Do leave your comments down below as to other options you think would be a good idea, and do give me feedback whether you'd like me to continue with this series with the best value watches at a particular price range. So thank you very much for watching. Do please like, share and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more of my content on this channel. So thank you very much for watching. This is Arm on the Watch Guy, over and out.